And that made me kind of have to sit too and think because I'm like, I get like little Eric's, human response for sure. And I get it now that it's been said, but like the whole, I'm like, damn, I thought I was community oriented. Like, what?
Oh, come on, man. You can do better than that. Smack your goddamn daddy.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere, where we dive into TV shows and films that are published on Tubi. We'll explore the good, the bad, and find all the lessons in between. I'm your host, Manji, and for today's episode, we are going to be diving into Tijuana Jackson. Now, if you missed the previous episode, I do think you should go ahead and check it out. We dived into the foreign horror film Ghost Train. But let's go ahead and get into Tijuana Jackson. In this film, it starts with Rachel, who is an Asian a college student who's about to get ready to graduate, and she wants to dedicate her final project to TJ, aka Tijuana Jackson, just because she's been a fan of his blog and she wants to kind of highlight the contrast of their lives. Like TJ being someone who's been locked up behind bars most of his life, who still figures out a way to remain optimistic compared to her, who is about to graduate college, and we can assume that she just don't have much thrill for life. So she kind of just wanted to explore that. So the beginning of this film, we see Rachel and her cameraman Justin to get ready to go visit TJ, who is still behind bars at this point in the film. Rachel and Justin, they make it to TJ while he's still in prison to interview him right before he is paroled. And TJ, he's one of those people who lived a lot of life. Therefore, he is very wise and he kind of just preaches that to anyone who would listen, but in a very Negro way. So while TJ is kind of going on a little tangent, while Rachel and Justin is there interviewing him, he stands up. The security guard in the prison tells him to sit down. Eventually, he ends up getting beat up by the prison guard because he was just too passionate to sit down. And then we see Rachel kind of inquiring with TJ, asking like why he won't speak up for himself, and he had to make it plain for the girl, like, look, I'm about to get out soon. So it's like, do I want freedom or justice in this point in life? And it's obvious that he chose freedom because in this point you have to kind of choose your battles. You go and tell on the security guard, and now he's gonna have to stay like a couple more months before he can even get out. So definitely a wise decision on TJ's behalf. But the thing that had me cracking up with this was, optimistic Rachel, which I'm a little bit of both. Rachel was like, "Why can't you have both freedom and justice?" And the way TJ looked at her, he was like, "Oh, you must be a vegan or something." And they apparently have some sort of procedure that they have to do before they let prisoners out. And so TJ was following along, in which the prison officials or workers, they were definitely opposed to the camera crew being there, but TJ worked it out where they could figure out a way to get them to stay. And so this is where TJ is informing all of them his plans for when he get out of prison, in which he's going to focus on being a motivational speaker and a life coach. And the part that had me cracking up with this, but also confirmation, they had a linguistics specialist there to translate what TJ is saying to the warden of this prison, which again, I thought was hilarious. They labeled it as street vernacular, but a lot of people would consider this AAV, which is African American vernacular, or Ebonics, if you will. So I thought that was dope. I know Romany, who created this, was probably, being funny, but to me, it was confirmation because we really do need to start respecting Av or Ebonics as an actual language in which, if you don't fully understand, then you're going to need a translator. So I thought that was hilarious, but also, yeah, you're right. Yeah. But since we're documenting TJ, we're literally just kind of getting insight of how other people feel around him as well. So we see that TJ has actually been super helpful while in prison. He's been super motivational for other prisoners. Usually, going on his long little speeches and stuff. But I feel like, the fact that he's relatable to them is what makes them a little bit more comfortable to even be receptive to what he is handing out. So I thought that was beautiful to see. And then also just him interacting with the dogs and stuff there. He figured out a way to train these dogs on some next level shit. So now it's time for TJ to finally get out and be actually released from this prison. And throughout, the procedure as they prepare him for his release, the workers there were asking about his family, if he wanted to call or make plans to have someone come pick him up. Now, he was super confident that his family would be there, but unfortunately, once he was finally released, he was there all by himself. So he ended up hitching a ride with Rachel and Justin, and they ended up taking him back home. In which TJ's mom and sister wasn't that happy to see him this time with this release. But TJ's mom go ahead and update him on what he's been missing out while he's been away, in which he was informing him how his nephew's been acting up. And immediately, like TJ's low key performing because we got the camera crew following him around, and he do feel like his life story is important. So he got to kind of, put on the show, so to speak. So he's like, where he at? Where he at? Where little Eric at? That's his nephew name. And then we meet his sister and he's arguing with his sister. So it's just a lot of just chaos happening this first night back home. But unfortunately for TJ, there was nowhere to sleep. In this home. So we see that his former room, now occupied by his sister, also shows his character because if in the Kendrick Lamar songs we be talking about being institutionalized, like I feel like this is what he was talking about because in TJ's room he has like those metal toilet and sink combo that they have in the prison cells, and then he had one of those prison payphones in his home room. So when he went in the room, we see Tammy, who played his sister, sitting on the toilet in the room. So that was, again, it was funny to see, but it's also just something to fucking think about. Eventually, TJ learns that there's nowhere for him to sleep inside this house. So he goes outside to the car to sleep in the car. And Lil Eric, want to be supporting his uncle, goes and sleeps in the car with him. The next morning, Rachel and Justin return to record more of TJ's life. And first thing we see is Lil Eric being cussed out because he didn't tell his mom that he was going to go outside to sleep in the car with his uncle. So she thought something happened to him. So the next thing we meet TJ's parole officer, played by Regina Hall, and she pulls up just, to get him in check and let him know what is expected of him now that he is out of prison. And she end up having her little confessional with the camera in which she shares something about TJ. She just said that TJ has a lot of potential, but he just keeps doing dumb shit, which could be applied to many people. But we also learned that her and TJ used to have a little thing back in the day. So that's probably another reason why she kind of keeps looking out for him because there's still some love there. So TJ is trying to put Cheryl on game. Cheryl's the probation officer, and let her know that, hey, it's going to be damn near impossible for me to get a job out here. But what I can tell you, what I'm about to do is become a life coach and a motivational speaker. But Cheryl, she's not trying to hear that shit. And she said she's going to be there every day and help him apply to jobs until he actually get a job because getting a job is imperative for him to stay out of prison. So when TJ was getting out of prison, he had received a voicemail or letter or something from this thing called the Tastemakers, which is supposed to be some sort of competitive reality type TV show. So now, after speaking with Cheryl and stuff, he thought to reach out back to them just because he want to take himself seriously and not go the route of getting a job because been there, done that. He already know where that's going to lead. So this time around, he's really going to step out on faith on himself and go the whole life coach and motivational speaker route. So that's why he's like, I got to make it to this Toastmakers. He was like, I got to make it to these Toastmakers. So now Rachel and Justin, they kind of, feel like they got what they needed. Again, this project is only 10 minutes long. So they asked Sharia, who is TJ's sister, to sign a waiver so they can have little Eric in their video, in their short film, but she refused because there's just some animosity between her and TJ right now. But TJ is thinking on another level. He thinking big. He basically told Rachel to stop thinking small, bitch. And he was like, yo, you basically committing to do the bare minimum of a 10-minute video just because your professor told you to and not seeing the potential you have here. This could become a fucking blockbuster movie. And you about to let this go and just do what you were told to do by your professor? Or something of that nature. And Rachel, I like when people have little good comebacks. Like, she was like, maybe if you followed the rules, you wouldn't be in prison so often. Which is like, oh, okay, okay, okay. But then TJ, he responds saying,
But you don't need bars to be in prison. You gotta ask yourself, why is it a nigga fresh out the joint can see a brighter future for you than you can see for yourself? How's that for confinement?
and then she had to like sit with that. And then we see her continue on recording because, why is it that this dude who's fresh out of jail can see more for me than I can see for myself? So now that they're on board, TJ want to make it seem that he got a plan and he got shit figured out when in reality he had no plan. So we just see him literally just driving around until Lil Eric called him out on it. We also learned how TJ's been managing his blog while he was in prison. It turns out Lil Eric was the mastermind behind it. So while he was locked up, Lil Eric was making sure the blog stays up to date and basically spreading TJ's word. So that's really dope of Lil Eric. So it got to the point where after Lil Eric called TJ out, he pulled him to the side in hopes to not get it on camera. But Rachel and Justin are really good documented, so we still see it, in which Lil Eric ends up sharing his plan with TJ. And his plan was, first and foremost, is to inform his followers that he is currently out of prison and he is open to doing motivational speeches as well as life coach type work. So continue to promote himself online, but also take it further and go out and campaign in the streets. So knock on doors, kiss baby, and just basically deal with the community. TJ loves the plan. It is a great plan. So once TJ and Lil Eric made it back to the car with Rachel and Justin, TJ made it appear as if he was the mastermind behind all of this, which was not a good look. Mm-mm. And you can tell it rubbed Lil Eric the wrong way as well. But TJ did take Lil Eric's advice and went out and hit the ground running. So we see him out basically working with the community. And it was really dope to see him create space for people to feel comfortable enough to even share a lot of personal shit. But then we got to the nigga moments.
Seem like you got no pockets. You think I can get like $5 from you? Can I hold $20? Can I please hold $20?
Oh, you're actually asking for $20?
You got like $20 I can hold?
Hold? Like just a hold?
Because after, all these people confided and he provided life guidance, so to speak, he eventually ended up asking them, to hold a couple dollars, which is where he fucked up. Because again, eventually that would have turned into some money. They would have loved the advice and then they would have reached out and booked the session. But since he was pressing them for money, begging essentially for money for these people, made it seem like, a scammer, because you coming out here making it seem like you're just trying to help me by sharing some wisdom. And now here you are asking me for a couple of dollars. So it was one dude in particular who he helped who would not let up. So after he gave TJ some money, he just couldn't let go of the fact that he was scammed. So he was like following TJ throughout the park and everywhere else that they were. And was literally just chasing him down, trying to get his money back. So it's like TJ was so close. It was so close. So now they're riding around and getting it again. And Rachel is inquiring about Lil Eric because earlier in the film we learned that he is not like actively in school. So she was inquiring about that, like, do you guys have any plans on putting him back in school? Like, what's going on with Lil Eric in school? And TJ kind of just brushed it off because people have mixed feelings when it comes to public schooling and whatnot, and just the type of education that is given to people like Lil Eric in certain impoverished areas in this country. So I understand both sides. However, TJ was kind of, trying to be funny and was like, Lil Eric is smart. He actually probably smarter than you. So Rachel was like, huh. So TJ was like, well, let me ask you a question. There's three birds on the wire, and I shoot one of the birds. How many birds are left? So Rachel, she said what I would have said, and that was none. So, just trying to think outside the box a little bit. If you shoot one of the birds, the noise from the gun is probably going to scare off the other birds, leaving no birds there. And that answer was incorrect. And while she was, answering, little Eric was like, "Ooh, ooh, pick me, pick me." It was so cute seeing him just so eager to answer, because it's like kids, they want to learn, but the way this school system is set up, it kind of discourages it. And I'll probably elaborate on that in another video. But he gives Lil Eric the opportunity to respond or answer this question, and he said that he would ask more questions. So in this scenario, TJ said he was the one who was shooting the bird. So if this is a community, that we're living in, you would know this person who's shooting it. So you wouldn't do the math and just think of the birds and stuff. You would ask, like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Of course, not like that, but hey, what are you doing? Are you hungry? Like, why are you shooting birds? I have food. So you basically inquire to see what is wrong because what this person is doing is abnormal. So you think it with a more community mindset. TJ said Rachel had an assembly line response while Lil Eric had a human response. And that made me kind of have to sit too and think, because I'm like, I get like Lil Eric's, human response for sure. And I get it now that it's been said, but like I'm like, damn, I thought I was community oriented. Like, what? But I love how proud little Eric looked after that confirmation from his uncle. But eventually, this car breaks down. So we got to get Rachel. Everybody is involved in helping. And Rachel is not letting up with school and little Eric. So she's asking more questions as to, like, are y'all for real about not putting this boy in school? And which TJ was like, if 90% of schooling is memorization, then what exactly are you teaching these kids to memorize? And that's what I mean, where I'm saying, they both are making good points. However, you still need to come to the conclusion and do what is best for this child and his learning. Because if you're not going to put him in school, what are you doing to offset that? Are you schooling him at home? Where is he learning? How are you teaching this child? So they finally pushed the car to like a safe space, and TJ and Lil Eric, they go and get some gas. Of course, they have to walk. And now we just see Rachel just self reflecting. And I just love these types of experiences, like these types of moments. Like just this time with TJ just made her just look back on herself and I guess have her decide who she wants to be in this life and act accordingly. And not to toot my own horn, but I feel like I kind of give that experience to a lot of people. So the next day, we see TJ getting up early, and it's obvious that he's trying to get out of the house before Cheryl, his probation officer, pop up on them. There's a lot of things wrong, quote unquote, with TJ, but the one thing we can't take away from him is he is a very caring man and he look out for the people that he loves. At least to his understanding. So while he was trying to get out, he seen that his mama needed something and stuff. So long story short, he ends up assisting with his mother and then making food for little Eric, just making sure everybody is good. So by the time it was time for him to leave, Cheryl was there. And so Cheryl is picking TJ up because she's personally about to take him to these establishments so he can apply to jobs in hopes that he actually get one. And now just like it just felt so comforting hearing TJ and Cheryl talk in this car. Like if I was in the back seat, I probably would just been sitting back there smiling just because it just it just felt like home. Like
And then you was over there messing with that other girl. She was messing with me. I was doing what I had to do. You know she got shot. Yeah. Lost a leg. Yeah, I heard. I thought she lost a leg to diabetes. That's what they said, but she started stripping again. So it's a little specialty shop, but they do all the amputees. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just so black and I love it. Oh my goodness. Cheryl is helping TJ apply for these jobs as well, like helping him fill out the actual applications, in which we learned that TJ got a lot of work experience in jail. They be putting these prisoners to work, um, which will argue why they be having these quotas to meet to fill these prisons up, but I'm not gonna go there. Now in this next scene, it was really nostalgic for your girl personally. Now throughout this film, they kept saying that this took place in Florida, but I bet my life that half of this was shot up in LA because in this scene right here, this is Superior Grocers, and they only have these grocery stores in Southern California. And this one in particular looked like the one I worked at my first job straight out of high school over there on Imperial and Crenshaw. And I'm just like, ugh, is this fucking movie about me? But there are definitely other parts that were recorded in Florida, which is pretty obvious with the whole gators and scenes and stuff. Maybe just the scenes with Regina Hall were recorded in LA, but half of this was shot in LA and half in Florida, 1000%. But TJ, being a thoughtful man that he is, he comes out of Superior bringing Cheryl some flowers. And you can tell she was super appreciative of it. And you can tell too that this is a situation that probably would have worked out if TJ just would stop doing dumb shit. So once TJ makes it back home, he checks his fucking prison phone voicemail and he learns that the Toastmasters left him a voicemail letting him know the information on how to get to the auditions and what's needed to audition. We also learned that the audition is in Orlando, so it's going to be a little drive away from where they are currently. TJ wastes no time. He starts rehearsing right away. So it shows just how serious he is taking this next step of his life. TJ is also on parole, so he will need permission from Cheryl, and which Cheryl wasn't trying to hear it when it came to this Toastmasters because she was only thinking, by the books. And with her being a parole officer, it makes sense. So, in order for him to get his life back on track, there's literally only one way for him to do that. And that way is not him becoming a motivational speaker or a life coach. So, she ended up getting so frustrated, she ended up putting them all out of her car. But again, TJ is on the mission. He is not going to give up. And then he also just kind of goes on a tangent about like how everyone isn't a visionary like himself. And
You consistently feed and exercise your faith, it will eventually outgrow your fears. Today's billionaires, they earn their billions by taking chances on the unknown, while the rest of us staying enslaved by the familiar. Today, and as of today, I'm strictly on my billionaire grind. I denounce that petty hustle.
I drink to that. So once TJ and them make it back to the house, there's like not a birthday, but there's a dinner celebration happening, which was a surprise for TJ. But that's because his sister informed his mom that he had a new job, but it was in Orlando, Florida. So once the mom found out it was taking place in Orlando, Florida, she was low key off board and didn't want him to go there. She wanted him to stay closer to them, sorry. TJ kind of started going, starting to be on one and was just explaining to them that, this is what I need to do if I want to eventually take care of all y'all, like I got to take these chances. And then he was like, you know what? Y'all actually scared of me changing because he feel that, if he changed too much, they're going to feel some type of way. But this whole little tangent ended up leading to him asking why no one visited or wrote him while he was in prison. And his mom, let him know exactly why that changed. Because I'm sure initially, like once he first went in, there was some sort of communication in writing, but eventually that dies down. And she shared, like, I got to pay $13 just to have a conversation with you. And it's not even a fruitful conversation. I'm sitting there listening to you be in misery, listening to you just suffering. Also, she went the religious route, saying, like, there's no God in that house. And TJ was left speechless for the first time in this film, and he just got up and left the table. So now TJ is trying to get Sharia, his sister, to find or to sign these release forms so we can have little Eric up in this, feature film, which is about to be. And of course, she says no. And then that kind of sets him off even more because he's like, oh, so you could twerk on Instagram, but you can't twerk, you can't sign these papers to have a better future for your son. Eventually, TJ and Sharia have a heart to heart, which I am thankful for because it's like obviously some things need to just get off their chest and they need to hug it out and they can move forward. So, unfortunately, the camera crew was out of the house for this one, but we can see them having that conversation. And based on the body language, it was like a roller coaster of emotions. So, they went from like obviously having like some sort of fight, argument to just laughing and eventually embracing one another. So that was beautiful to see. So once they TJ and Sharia made up, they invited the camera crew back in so they can, witness the other side and not just them bickering. This time around, TJ and them got up out of there before Cheryl could pull up. So now they are en route to Orlando, Florida. So they made a stop at Disney World because TJ promised Lil Eric he would take them. Now, to be fair, and what he said in the film, he never said that they were going inside of the theme park, but they did go there and they like walked around out front. Of course, Lil Eric was disappointed because he was under the impression that they were going into there. And TJ was just straight up, it's just not in the budget right now. We could come here and view this for this moment, but as of right now, we don't have the budget for it. But again, TJ was not, or sorry, Lil Eric was not trying to hear that. Once they got back in the car, Lil Eric gives TJ the release forms that his sister finally signed. So Sharia signed those forms. So now Lil Eric can be a part of whatever is going on with this film that Rachel is creating. So TJ, he make it to the Taste Masters or Toastmasters. It's one of the masters. And so he's excited. He learns off top that you can't bring minors in. So Lil Eric can't enter with him. And he's also just seeing some familiar faces, which was some red flags. TJ just tells Lil Eric to chill in the car while he handles that. And of course, Lil Eric was disappointed yet again. So he kind of just disappears out of sight, out of mind. And eventually we learn that this whole Toastmasters was actually a setup. These people reached out to people who had current warrants in Orlando and invite them to this Toastmasters event competition, and then just basically had the police pull up on them and get them and arrest them on the spot, basically. So Rachel and Justin, they ended up paying off his warrant, so he was able to leave from that set, thank God. But they were unable to find Lil Eric and the car that they drove here in. Now you can imagine just how disappointing, possibly embarrassing this moment was for TJ to the point where he's been wanting them to record everything nonstop. At this moment, he was like, just stop fucking filming. Just this is not no shit for you to be recording right now. They finally learned that Lil Eric is actually at the police station and they sent Rachel in because, TJ got warrants and shit to try to get him. But unfortunately, they are only going to release Lil Eric to family members. The only option is to go get Sharia and his mom and then come back and get Lil Eric. Lil Eric tried to sneak into Disney World on his own. So he was like, if you're gonna have me sitting in the car, then I'm gonna go to Disney World. And you know what? I know that's right. So they finally went and got Lil Eric and made it back to the crib. That night, TJ went to go pull up on Cheryl, but Cheryl was in bed with her partner, her other police partner, some dude. And TJ gave her some check stubs. So, to make it appear that he's working or whatever. He also got his ass beat because he was talking a lot of shit about the police officers she was up in there with. So now we see TJ. I mean, one thing we can give him is he hasn't been sitting on his ass since he got out. Like, yeah, he may not have a job, but he's been out here figuring some shit out. So I give him that. This time around, he's making a song. Um, a little bit more on the positive side, but nonetheless, he's making a song. And while he was in the booth, aka the closet, recording his bars, Cheryl pulled up. And so the producer, whoever he was working with, ended up leaving him there because the police is there. So once he got out of the booth, aka the closet, he sees Cheryl there. Cheryl presses him because he gave her fake check stubs. And now she's just disappointed in him. And at this point, she feels like her only options is to basically get him back in jail because obviously he needs to learn some more lessons, in which she did. She called it in or whatever. So after her conversation with TJ on the porch, she pulls off and another police car pulls up. And unfortunately, TJ goes back to prison. This time around, he's serving 13 months for violation of his parole. So now TJ is out again 13 months later, and we see him actually abiding by the rules this time. We see him working, he's pushing carts at a grocery store, and shout out to Rachel and Justin coming back to continue on recording for this blockbuster film. So now Lil Eric has this opportunity to press him about what happened, 13 months prior. And he was feeling some type of way because he said, like, when there was no room for you in the house to sleep, you slept in the car and I went out there to sleep in the car with you. But when it came to this Toastmasters, they didn't allow minors in, but it didn't take nothing for you to leave me out in the car by myself. And then that even led to you getting arrested. But then TJ was like, sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the things that you want. Lil Eric says, how great can the success be if you are going to be the only person who benefits from it?
Message.
And these are both valid points. Like, I definitely get Lil Eric's side of this, but me being an adult, I also get TJ's side because although it turned out to be a setup, had this been something that was legit, and if the only thing that's standing between TJ and becoming a millionaire or becoming his best self is an audition in which Lil Eric can't witness, then that solution is simple. But I also do get Lil Eric's point, but this is also a lesson. Lil Eric, of course, he's a child, but he made the decision to go and sleep in the car with his uncle because I guess out of like pity or something. But either way, he had an expectation to receive something in return. Like, he didn't do that just because he felt like he just wanted to be there for his uncle in that moment and he just wanted to do that in that moment. It was kind of like a transactional thing because that's why he felt some type of way and probably didn't fully understand why he was supposed to have sat in a car. To me, those two situations are completely different. Like, one, TJ probably would have been okay sleeping in that car with or without Lil Eric, but again, I understand him speaking from a child mindset, but those two things are not aligned. And for an adult, the lesson out of this is to only do things out of love. Do things truly because you want to do it. Do not do things because you expect something in return, because it's not always going to be that case. Like, yes, it would be beautiful if this person appreciates what you're doing for them, and out of that appreciation, they return some of that love back. However, that's not always our reality, and it's unfair to the person you're helping to put that pressure on them without clearly stating it. That's something that us as adults can learn from this moment with Lil Eric, is to only do things that you truly want to do out of love without any expectations, unless you make a legit agreement, and in that case, put that shit in writing. So yeah, I get both sides. So TJ, he ends up making it back home to his mom's crib, and it was refreshing to see his mom and Sharia both a little bit more excited to see him this release. And now we see Lil Eric in school speaking with the counselor, which is all great things. And the counselor is asking him what he wants to be when he grows up, and he said he wants to be a motivational speaker just like his uncle. Now you can see just how proud TJ was looking. And we see Rachel and Justin getting just like, I guess, like a confessional type interviews with again, the people who are in TJ's life. And it was just beautiful to see all these people say pleasant things about him this time around, like Cheryl, Sharia, his mother, and even Lil Eric. Like, this is the love that they should have been pouring into TJ. So now we see TJ going back to prison, but this time not as a prisoner, but as a motivational speaker. So of course, he's in the middle of one of his speeches, and he was saying how it took his little nephew, Lil Eric, turning up on him for him to truly understand that the success he was seeking would come from being selfless and not selfish. When you got a sense of purpose, you got to serve more than just yourself. And then he went on to say that every nigga got a purpose. And most of the time, that purpose is going to stem from a painful experience. And then he went on to share how when he was 13, his uncle tried to molest him, and he ended up beating his uncle up to the point where he could barely even speak well today. So the whole point of him sharing that was your pain should be the pathway to your purpose. And I always appreciate when other men speak on situations like this. Like, he spoke on how he handled it and how he turned that situation into his purpose, because whether we want to admit it or not, little boys experience the same type of violations as little girls do. So I appreciate Ramani for including this in there, and as well as highlighting or showing an example of how you can, in fact, transform that pain into purpose.
Your pain should be the pathway to your purpose. So when y'all get up out these blocks, don't seek success. Seek purpose. And let success find you. Because success, that's just an illusion. Purpose, that's the motherfucking conclusion.
The film ends with us learning that TJ did get permission to start his LLC out of his mom's house. So now he did, in fact, become that motivational speaker slash life coach that he always knew he could be. Now, I just want to state that this film was created by Romany Malco Jr., and it was created in honor of his father, Romantic Romany Malco Sr. And I'm not sure what part of him inspired it, but I love when people honor their loved one. So shout out to Romany, shout out to his father for being the inspiration of this lovely ass film. But let's go ahead and get into the lessons. Now, TJ was dropping lessons left and right. He is a life coach and shit after all. But I feel like the main takeaway from this is that it's never too fucking late. It's never too late to be who you desire to be in this world. It don't matter what you've experienced in this world. It don't matter how much you feel like you've suffered. It's never too fucking late to become who you truly desire. This is proof of that. Again, we have the contrast. We have this student, Rachel, who is about to literally just enter the real world for the first time, and she just not feeling very optimistic, not really feeling good about it, compared to TJ, who, some would argue lived most of his life in turmoil, and who people would assume would be more miserable. However, he's a bit more optimistic. Now, I feel like there's two lessons here. The first one I'm going to say is, like, I want us as a people to stop projecting how we feel we would be if we were in that person's shoes, compared to just taking them for what they are. And I feel like that's what Rachel was doing a lot in this film, and that's what kind of everybody was doing, which essentially is what made TJ so popular. People were interested in the how. It's like, how could someone who experienced so much bullshit in life still find a way to be positive? How? So I think that's what gets a lot of people's attention, because they just trying to figure out how. I think I actually do know it, because I can relate to TJ in this aspect. I lived a very interesting life, I'll say. One of my past friends said my life was a Lifetime movie, so that goes to show. However, I've always remained super positive for the most part. Like, I definitely went through depressed spells and all that, because I am human. However, I just always remain positive, and I think that's what me and TJ kind of have in common, and that's perspective. And granted, if you are born in, impoverished areas in the United States, the hood, if you will, you kind of get used to seeing what the worst can be. So it's a little bit easier to kind of find a positive perspective. Moral of the story, it's about perspective. Regardless of what you're going through, your perspective is going to help you handle whatever it is that you're going through, because once we label what it is we're going through, that is what's going to fuel all those emotions that come with it. So it could be depression, happiness, whatever emotion that you want to feel. So for example, you lost a job. Focusing on the factual fact that you lost your job, you could easily become sad or depressed. Like, I ain't got no there's no income, I don't know what I'm going to do. Immediately just go into worrying, rather than looking at your perspective. Hey, I actually was miserable at this job for the past fucking 5 years. I actually hated myself every time I clocked in. Yeah, I have to figure some shit out when it comes to rent and stuff. However, I feel lighter that I don't have this. And I actually got exactly what I wanted. I wanted more time to myself. So the fact that they let me go gives me some time for myself for the moment. Like, you see, that's an example of just focusing on the perspective rather than just diving into the depressed or the worry deep in. But out in that lesson there. But the main lesson is that it's never too late to become who you truly desire, who you want to be in this lifetime. At the end of the day, your actions decide who you want to be. And you know as well as I do that your actions can change in a millisecond. So if you want to be, known as a thief, a liar, what do? You continue to steal things from people, and you continue to lie. If you want to be a person who, cares for people, then what do? If a stranger is coming, you hold the door. Your actions show who you are, rather than what your mouth is saying. So when I say it's never too late, I mean just that. So if you decide that wherever direction you're going right now in life does not align with who you want to be in this lifetime, bust that left and start making and start acting accordingly to who you are deciding who you want to be. And it's literally that instant. Yeah, there are going to be people trying to say that you're, faking the funk or whatever the case may be, but you only have to worry about how you feel about yourself. So you could continue on with those actions, and hey, you could be going on and maybe say you're going to be a little bit more nicer. You go 5 years actively making the decision to be nice and realize, like, people actually got me fucked up when I'm a lot more nice. So, you know what? I'm going to be a little bit more mean. So now, and mean, it's subjective. So when I say mean, I just mean aggressively asserting boundaries. But I'll stop there. Moral of the story is that it is never too late. No matter what life you was given, no matter what hardships you have to experience in life, you still get to decide who you want to be simply by your actions. And isn't that like so exciting? Like that kind of makes life a little bit more fun. Like, it's just like, I could just actually change all this shit tomorrow if I want to. I'm going to stop there and I actually got to get some off my chest. Your girl is about to move again to a whole nother state, low key across the country. So, with that being said, we're going to go on a little hiatus for there's a lesson here somewhere. My goal is to come back for the first Saturday in September next month. So that should be enough time to get set up, as well as create a whole new little set at my new spot, in which I will be showing you guys that whole process as well. So eventually I will share my personal YouTube page that I will be starting if you care to follow me in my personal life. So I say all that to say our new podcast episode will be coming in 3 weeks. Please stay alert to the notifications and posts here on YouTube. So within a week before September, I will inform you of the next movie, which most likely will be Psycho Beach Party if it's still on Tubi by the time I get ready to record. But I say all that to say, if you've made it this far, you go ahead and subscribe, like this podcast, share it with a friend. As always, I appreciate y'all, and I'm gonna see y'all soon.